Dzień dobry Państwu, serdecznie witam Państwa. Nazywam się Rafał Dudkiewicz. Mam przyjemność i zaszczyt powitać Państwa w Centralnym Przystanku Historia Instytutu Pamięci Narodowej w Warszawie imienia Lecha Kaczyńskiego. Na prezentacji polskiego wydania książki autorstwa Johannesa, Vande, Voorde i Dirka Verbeke Zapomniani Bohaterowie, śladami polskich wyzwolicieli Zaromosze de Wilhelmshaven. Książka ukazała się dzięki wysiłkom wydawnictwa Instytutu Pamięci Narodowej oraz ambasady Belgii, przedstawicielstwa Flandrii. Oryginalna niderlandzka wersja książki pod tytułem Verheyen Helden ukazała się w 2020 roku nakładem Lorno Publishers. Książka wpisuje się we flagowy projekt edukacyjno-memoratywny Instytutu Pamięci Narodowej Szlaki Nadziei, Odyseja Wolności, historia polskich wyzwolicieli, którzy podczas II wojny światowej walczyli po stronie aliantów i okupantów, po stronie aliantów z okupantem niemieckim. Książka ta wzrusza nieustannie. Owa odzyskana wolność oznacza dla nich uchodźstwo. Po demobilizacji nie wrócili do Polski, ale pozostali w Belgii lub Holandii. Album stanowi hołd złożony tym bohaterom. Organizatorami dzisiejszej uroczystości są Instytut Pamięci Narodowej i Ambasada Belgii, przedstawicielstwo Flandrii w Polsce. Mam zaszczyt powitać pana doktora habilitowanego Karola Polejowskiego, zastępcę prezesa Instytutu Pamięci Narodowej, pana Matthiasa de Moor, przedstawiciela generalnego Flandrii w Polsce i krajach bałtyckich, oraz autorów prezentowanego albumu, pana Johannesa, Vande, Voorde, i Dirka Verbeke. Pragnę również powitać potomków żołnierzy I Dywizji Pancernej generała Maczka, w szczególności wnuczkę generała, panią Karolinę Maczak. Serdecznie też witam wszystkie ekscelencje oraz cały korpus dyplomatyczny oraz dyrektorów i przedstawicieli jednostek organizacyjnych administracji państwowej oraz wszystkich zacnych gości, którzy są dzisiaj tutaj z nami. Proszę o zabranie głosu gospodarza miejsca, zastępcę prezesa Instytutu Pamięci Narodowej, pana doktora habilitowanego Karola Polejewskiego.
Please let me speak in English. I think it's a better solution because of our guests. Your Excellencies, ambassadors, distinguished guests. Ladies and gentlemen, at the end of August 1944, after the end of the bloody Battle of Normandy in France, German troops were retreating in disarray northwards towards the borders of Belgium and Germany. The Polish 1st Armored Division of General Stanisław Maciek took part in the pursuit. After crossing the Ternoise on 6 September, the leading units of the division entered Belgian territory. The first Belgian town liberated by the Poles was Ypres. The British liaison officer to the Polish Armed Forces Command, Colonel Harold Mitchell, who accompanied the Polish division, wrote, "It was moving to see Polish tanks advancing along the road through the famous Memorial Gate at Ypres. The Polish troops, under the superb command of General Maciek, made history in weeks." Ryszard Kiersnowski, a correspondent of the Polish Telegraphic Agency, who was present in Ypres, noted, "I saw hundreds of people literally crying tears of joy. These people, despite the fact that the fighting hadn't ceased, ran up to the tanks and combat vehicles with flowers, wine, with baskets of eggs and fruit, constantly praising Poland. On 7th September, in fierce street fighting, the Polish division captured Roeselare and Huglede. On 8th September, the Poles captured Tilt and Ruiselde. Next day, the 10th Dragoon Regiment captured the town of Alter. German resistance in the area was still strong. Soldiers of the 1st Division occupied Nivelles and reached the Ghent Canal. Following new orders, the soldiers of the 3rd Rifle Brigade entered Ghent on 11th September, enthusiastically welcomed by the local population, even though Ghent was still not free. Meanwhile, on 14th September, the division's troops slowly advanced with the 3rd Rifle Brigade, pushing the enemy to the north and reaching the Lieve Canal, and the 10th Armored Cavalry Brigade advancing towards Hulst. On 15th September, most of the division's forces were diverted to the Axel-Hulst Canal with the aim of capturing the crossings and then the Dutch town of Terneuzen. The mayor of Alter, Dr. de Pauw, noted after the war, "Of the allies who passed through Alter, Poles were loved the most, spoken of with the greatest fervor and greatly appreciated. Their truly exemplary devotion and bravery will also be well remembered by the residents." Ladies and gentlemen, today we present to you the Polish edition of the book about the heroes of those days. Poles who in the ranks of the Polish armed forces in the West fought to free Europe and the world free from German totalitarianism, and who could not return to their communist enslaved country after the war. They remained in exile in France, in Belgium, Flanders, and the Netherlands. We also presented the story of the fate of Polish soldiers in Poland and abroad as a part of our flagship commemorative and educational project, Trials of Hope, the Odyssey of Freedom, implemented in 2022 on the initiative of the IPN president, Karol Nawrocki. Today, you will have the opportunity to see the exhibition constituting an integral part of the project, with boards devoted to Belgian and Flemish themes, prepared especially for this event. Since its inauguration on 18 March 2022 at the Royal Castle in Warsaw, the exhibition has been presented on 5 continents, in such countries as the United States, Canada, Mexico, Israel, France, Kazakhstan, Iran, South Africa, the United Kingdom, Germany, Hungary, and most recently, the Netherlands. It is further worth mentioning that very soon, on 7th October, the exhibition with Polish-British themes will be opened at the British Parliament. We are also in the process of finalizing agreements as to the presentation of the project at the European Parliament. Moreover, the Trials of Hope, the Odyssey of Freedom project contributes to broader cooperation with foreign historical, scientific, research-based and archival institutions worldwide. Educational projects initiated around the exhibition in collaboration with local communities are also a significant part of the endeavor. The fruit of such cooperation was, for example, the presentation in Canada, where the exhibition was viewed by 500,000 people as part of the Polish festival at Roncesvalles in Toronto. It is also worth recalling that the National Museum of Military History in Johannesburg has included it in its permanent exhibition. Since the beginning of September this year, in connection with the 18th anniversary of the liberation of the city, together with the Maciek Memorial Foundation, the Institute has been displaying the exhibition in Breda. The album, Forgotten Heroes, has been published by the Institute of National Remembrance as a part of the Trials of Hope, the Odyssey of Freedom project. By showing the individual stories of the soldiers of the 1st Armored Division, we pay tribute to the heroes whose fate, thanks to our joint efforts, will hopefully survive in the memory of future generations. It is all the more satisfying to note that the authors of the album are two Belgian, Flemish. Dirk Verbeke, director, former secretary of the Belgian Tilt, has for many years nurtured the memory of the Polish soldiers who liberated the city. He was the initiator and creator of the exhibition Armored Wings, commemorating the preparation of soldiers of the participation of the soldiers of the 1st Armored Division in the liberation of Flanders towns in September 1944, on which he cooperated with the Institute of National Remembrance through the Flanders government representation at the Royal Belgian Embassy. He takes care of the cemeteries and the war graves of Polish liberators in Flanders. He was also involved in the creation of a memorial to General Stanisław Maciek in the Flanders town of Roeselare. In 2021, he was awarded the Witness of History Award by the President of the Institute of National Remembrance. Johannes Vande is an accomplished Antwerp-based photographer whose images can be seen in magazines from New York to Japan. Having completed his journey to the places associated with Polish heroes, he noted in the book that today we are proud and happy to present to the Polish readers. Citation: although there are many streets and squares in Flanders and the Netherlands that commemorate the Polish liberators, drivers on the Polenstraat rarely think of the boys who were once so warmly welcomed. They were heroes who liberated us from the Nazis, but have now fallen into oblivion. Although many of them have passed away, if any of us would like to travel to Poland, we should start in Brussels and Amsterdam. Ladies and gentlemen, let the album that is now in your hands, thanks to the IPN Publishing House with cooperation with the representatives of Flanders in Poland, be the first stage of this journey. Thank you very much. Thank you for your coming. Thank you.
Dziękuję panu prezesowi. Proszę o zabranie głosu pana Matiasa Demura, przedstawiciela generalnego Flandrii w Polsce i krajach bałtyckich.
Dear ambassadors, dear excellencies, distinguished guests, Szanowni Państwo. It's an honor to welcome you to the book launch of the Polish translation of Forgotten Heroes, Zapomniani Bohaterowie. As you may know, and as you may have noticed from my poor Polish pronunciation, I've just started out as the general representative of Flanders here in Warsaw. But during my first weeks here, I've already noted how important history is in Poland. It is also the bread and butter of diplomats like myself, so I'm very eager to explore the connections between Poland and the region that I represent. And there are indeed a great many. Just a quick glance on our shared history on the European continent shows, for example, that during the Middle Ages, intense trade took place between Flemish and Polish Hanseatic cities. Or that at the time of religious wars, many Flemish Protestants migrated to Polish territories where they settled. Moreover, Polish kings and nobles were quite fond of Flemish art. Witness to this are the considerable collections in many Polish museums. And in the other direction, Polish amber found its way to many Flemish cities. In more modern times, we can say that trade between Flanders and Poland is a strong connecting factor. For example, if you look around at the Warsaw skyline here, you can find a lot of buildings that were built by Flemish investors. Today, we are here to commemorate a specific and very strong connection between Poland and Flanders, namely the 1st Polish Armored Division that liberated many cities in Flanders 80 years ago, under the leadership of General Maciek. We will learn more about their history in a minute, when Mr. Verbeke and Mr. Voorde, the author and the photographer who contributed to Forgotten Heroes, will give an elaboration on their heroism and hardships. What is clear already is that the 1st Polish Armored Division consisted of brave Polish soldiers who, after defending their homeland in 1939, fled to Western Europe, where they joined other allies in 1940 and made their way to Britain, where the 1st Polish Armored Division was officially formed in 1942. A group of heroes who landed in Normandy in 1944 and liberated large parts of northern France, Flanders, and the Netherlands, all the while strengthened by the hope of liberating their own homeland. It is no coincidence that the division's slogan reads, "For your and our freedom, za naszą I waszą wolność." However, Yalta's geopolitical decisions introduced a different fate for Poland, and the country disappeared behind the Iron Curtain for nearly half a century, and the dream of our Polish liberators to advance to a free Poland was in tatters. The post-war years were rife with difficulties for the Polish liberators. Many decided to stay in Western Europe and build a new life, and in Poland, the story of the 1st Polish Armored Division had no place in communist historiography. In Western Europe, veterans united and people dedicated themselves to keeping the memory of the Polish liberators alive. One of those dedicated men is Dirk Verbeke, a Fleming who has been devoted to commemorating the 1st Polish Armored Division for decades. Some years ago, in collaboration with Johannes van de Voorde, Dirk Verbeke decided to compile a book with stories of the veterans of the 1st Polish Armored Division. Forgotten Heroes, the book that now finally has a Polish translation and in a way truly comes home. The title seems very fitting, because these soldiers did not receive the attention they deserved in their Polish homeland, and because their contribution to the liberation of Flanders was not very well known to the general public. The Flemish representation that I represent is therefore sincerely proud and happy that it was able to support this translation. The 1st Polish Armored Division has been part of the Polish curriculum since the fall of communism. The Polish edition of this book, with the testimonies of its soldiers, will serve to further strengthen the memory of this division. 80 years on, the 1st Polish Armored Division continues to connect Flanders and Poland. We can see this in the presence today of people from both Flanders and Poland. And I wish to explicitly thank the Institute of National Remembrance and Dr. Poliowski, Deputy President of the IPN, for making this event possible. And also thank the relatives of the members of the 1st Polish Armored Division for their attendance. What also connects Flanders and Poland is music. In Flanders, we have a young, ambitious musician who is passionate about Chopin and who has resided in Warsaw for a few months to further cultivate that passion. Her name is Marie-François, and I thank her also for joining us today to liven up this book presentation with a musical note. This afternoon is dedicated to our liberators, to forgotten heroes who shouldn't be forgotten anymore. I wish you all an instructive afternoon. Dziękuję.
Dziękuję bardzo. A teraz zapraszam już Państwa na dyskusję wokół książki Zapomniani Bohaterowie. Zapraszam autorów, pana Johannesa Vande i pana Dirka Verbeke. Bardzo miło mi jeszcze raz panów powitać. Na początek do panów mam takie pytanie, które niewątpliwie nurtuje tutaj zgromadzone osoby, które też zapoznawały się z książką, miały okazję ją czytać. Skąd zainteresowanie u panów tą problematyką? Dlaczego taki temat?
Yes, why? It's a very long period that I am engaged in this mission. It is a mission for me. In 1991, I was nominated as a secretary in a Flemish city of Tielt, 25,000 inhabitants. And this city was liberated by the 1st Polish Armed Division at 8 September 1944. So yearly we had some patriotic ceremonies in my city. And so those Polish veterans were coming to Tielt, a city that they loved, because there were so many places of remembrance of this famous army, Polish army in the city, that they loved to come. So they told me their stories. So at first they were very shy. They didn't say anything about the war. But after a few years, I got known there better, and also their families, and they told me all their individual stories. Their incredible stories about the fighting in Poland, also the camps in Siberia, the long trail to get in Great Britain and Scotland. So I was really astonished of their stories, and then I decided to pay my life for the spreading of the memory of these Polish soldiers. So I began to collect books, films. I collected about 250 books and articles about 1st Polish Armed Division, 500 photos, different films. And I was also in connection with this regimental city of Krasnik here in Poland. And I came to Poland to the Museum of the 24th Lancers, and we shared documentations, photos. So I got really interested, and I decided to cooperate with films, 2 films, Fighting for Others, Dying for Poland, and also a film about magic which I cooperated. So when I retired from my service as secretary, then I became president of the 1st Polish Armed Division Association in Belgium. And this association reunites the families of the veterans and also all people who are interested in this matter. And from then on, it went very fast. I was asked by the Flemish government to curate this exhibition, Armed Wings. And so then I decided to write a book about 1st Polish Armed Division, but a historical book, a book with photos from all the cities, the Flemish cities that were liberated. So I worked 2 years on the book, and at a certain moment I went to my publisher, and I showed my publisher my work, but also the work of Johannes. Johannes was also simultaneously working on this project, but he will tell you more. And then we decided to make a book, a historical book, 50 pages history, only 40 historical pictures, but also accomplished with the photographical work of Johannes and also his interviews. But he will tell you more about this. So this is why I got involved.
To give you a direct answer to your question, your first question, how did I get interested in the story? Well, I couldn't be interested in the story. I wasn't, because I simply didn't know that this happened. I simply didn't learn at school, but I think we will talk about that later. that there were Polish people who fought alongside the Allied forces during the Second World War. Having said that, I am, besides being a photographer, I studied history and art history at the University of Leuven. So history is something that excites me. And so I came across this subject by coincidence. I was on reportage in Poland. It was a reportage for a Flemish weekly about contemporary economic migration of Polish people towards our regions. And during that reportage, I came across a professor of Slavistic at university and somebody who made a dissertation about that subject. And they told me about those Polish veterans. And it immediately excited me because I didn't know. It was like, for me, it was a hiatus in the history. And then I asked a list of the veterans whom I could still find across France, and I had to look them up myself as well. So across France and Germany and Flanders and the Netherlands. And then I had my first interview with, it was with Stefan Jezierski. He excited me immediately because his story was not only a story about what happened during the war, it was much broader than that. It was a story about what happened for him before the war, the Poland before the war, and then what he had to endure after the war, not only being stuck in this country, because he couldn't return to Poland, we all know that history, but also how the Polish people were treated, or the perception of Polish people through the eyes of maybe the English forces, the material they could use there, and in his case, in the case of Stefan Jezierski, the work he could do after the war in Belgium. So he was issued to go work in the mines. And he got a lung disease, and his reports, his medical reports, were falsified. So that story for these Polish people, it's not just about the war. It was before the war and after the war. So that excited me, and I really wanted to tell their story. And I looked up every veteran I could find to go and interview them and to write down their stories. And like Dirk was coming to tell. In fact, I already worked on this project, and he also independently. We didn't know from each other until we both met the people from Lano, the book publisher in Belgium, and then it all came together. My interviews and my photos, and Dirk's efforts to write down this historical story. So it's perfect. It's a dream team, I think. For this book, no?
Nieoczywista historia, bardzo ciekawa, jak w ogóle poznają się autorzy samej książki, ale tak przechodząc już do samej książki, jej treści, czym była pierwsza dywizja pancerna? Jak przebiegał, tak bardzo w skrócie, jej szlak bojowy, jakie miała dokonania, osiągnięcia?
Yeah, if you want to have a historical view, so most of you know that the first Polish Armed Division was established on the demand of General Sikorski in 1942 by General Maciek in Scotland. This armored division was composed of the remainings of the army, the Polish army that fought a defensive war in 1939 but also with volunteers from all over the world, Polish volunteers who came to Scotland from all over the world. And also, like, for instance, workers, Polish workers who worked in Belgium, for instance, 200 Polish mine workers were going to Scotland, also from France. A lot of volunteers from South Africa, also from South America. So they were trained for 2 years, from 42 till 44 in Scotland, and then they were a part of the Allies troops that landed on the shores of Normandy in end of July, beginning of August 1934. They got involved in a tremendous battle, the Battle of Monthermel, where more than 50,000 Germans were captured, and where the role of these Polish soldiers was very, very important, because they closed the encirclement of those German troops, the last big battle of the Germans against the Allies. And afterwards, the Poles pursued those retreating German army towards Belgium. And on the 6th of September 1944, they crossed the Belgian border in two axes, a red and a blue axe. And the first city that they conquered was Poperinge. And from Poperinge it went to the day after, the same day, the day after, to Ypres. So this legendary city from the first World War. And Maciek ordered his troops to save this city. He knew that Ypres was ruined in the First War, totally destroyed. And then he said to his troops, don't use artillery, we will use the infantry. So with almost no damage, they conquered the city. There were 9 Polish soldiers who died in this battle. And from Ypres it went to Roeselare with the famous story of a Scouts girl, a 21-year-old Scouts girl, who helped the Polish troops. She was she looked where she was on a bike, biking into the city, and she looked to the positions of the Germans, and she reported all those positions to General Maciek, so he could change his plans, and with much less efforts, he could conquer the city of Roeselare. Then it went to Tielt, my city where I live, with a kind of a guerrilla fight into the streets of Tielt, because he didn't want, Maciek, he didn't want also, didn't want to use his artillery, so it was man to man. But finally, after the fighting in Tielt, they went to Reuselede. And in Reuselede there was a retreating column of Germans, and the Polish soldiers and Polish tanks, they were so fast that this German column was attacked by the Polish. So also the Allied Air Force attacked also this column, and there was 2 kilometers of wounded and dying Germans, dying horses, 250 Germans were taken prisoner. So it took months to clean up the mess, the whole mess. And this fighting at Ruiselede was called Petit Chambois, like the big fighting in the Falaise with the Le Couloir de la Mort, the corridor of the death. It was also a small corridor of death. And after Ruiselede, they went to Alter, where the Polish soldiers tried to cross the canal. It didn't succeed. There were many casualties and death. And finally, the Canadians had to cross this canal. But after those first period of heavy fighting in West Flanders, they went to Ghent, to Gandava, and the British had already taken the main city, but Polish fighters, Polish soldiers had to clean up the suburbs of Ghent. From Ghent, it went to Land van Waas, the country of Waas, with important cities like Lokeren, Sint-Niklaas, Beveren-Waas. They stayed there for some days. So consequences was that after the war there were a lot of marriages in this region, and then they tried to help for the liberation of Antwerp and also the Scheldt estuarium, and from then the fighting was going on at the Belgian Netherlands, the border of Belgium and Netherlands, and at the Merksplas, Beerse, where there's also many casualties, more than 50 or almost 50 Polish soldiers died there. From there it went to Breda, where the division was standing still for 5 months. So they got acquainted with local girls and local families. And from then it went very quick, and then they liberated a lot of Dutch cities, and also then at the last step, they liberated Wilhelmshaven with the capitulation of the Kriegsmarine, the German Kriegsmarine. And then for 2 years, they occupied northern Germany. And after that, so the division was dismissed, and all those Polish soldiers, they had to look for new destination, or they were going back to Poland. Approximately 10% was going back to Poland because of their family, of their wives, of their a lot of reasons. But most of them were staying in Western Europe, and they have to look for a new homeland far away from Poland.
I could give the response, no further comment, of course. What interests me is, as a photographer, as a documentary photographer, is the broader human perspective. I met those people, I noted their stories, I listened to their stories, and I must say, every story of those veterans reads like a thriller, a book if you want. You can make a movie out of every life of those persons. In every war, we can give a consecutive report of what happened, and this is, like Dirk just told, is what those Polish people did. So from a human perspective, there's always maybe a broader geopolitical perspective as well. What they knew, those veterans, is regarding their motivation, in fact, what they knew is that the Woodrow Wilson, the president of the United States, who his heritage is noted down in the Atlantic Charter of 1941, in which is stipulated. It was in fact Roosevelt and Churchill were already thinking about what should be done after this war is over. And that is the broader perspective. And in that Atlantic Charter, it was stipulated that all the countries that would be liberated would be able to choose their own government, would be able to have a free trading system, and so on. So in 1941, that was the Atlantic Charter. And those Polish people who already had to flee for the Germans in 1939, they knew that. So there must be this kind of motivation behind going to liberate Poland, our own country, because they knew they would be free. And then we had the Conference of Yalta. Okay, so this is the broader perspective, and so they were very motivated, and I had the impression that in those personal stories, which interest me as a documentary photographer, they had they were to me, it sounded like they were the most motivated unit of troops who fought along the Allied forces, because they were to go to liberate Poland, which they didn't. That's the only thing I have to add probably to that question. The rest you already told. Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Po zakończeniu bitwy o Normandię alianci posiadali na froncie zachodnim, tutaj wymienię, 48 dywizji, 31 amerykańskich, 15 brytyjskich i kanadyjskich, 1 francuską i tylko 1 polską. Czy wobec powyższego, panów zdaniem, panów ocenie, pierwsza dywizja pancerna jest wystarczająco eksponowana w literaturze i publicystyce dotyczącej historii zachodniego teatru działań wojennych, czy też może za mało?
Yes, there are many books about the contributions of the Americans, Canadians, and British, but four more little books about the Polish contribution in this battle of Western Europe. So I think the Polish contributions is underlighted. There are some books I can talk to you about this book, but like other nationalities, like the Belgian Brigade Piron was also fighting in, together with allies, like also the Czech Independent Brigade. They were also fighting alongside Polish troops, and all those other nationalities, they are underlighted. So I think our book is a contribution to spread this Polish contribution, to spread this memory of those Polish soldiers towards the broad public in Belgium, in the Dutch-speaking countries like the Netherlands and Flanders, but also now, thanks to IPN, to the Polish-speaking community in not only in Poland but into the world. So we are very thankful to IPN that with this publication. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Okay. W Polsce pamięć o działaniach pierwszej dywizji pancernej przeżywa takie, no aktualnie rodzaj takiego renesansu. Jak współcześnie prezentuje się panów zdaniem zbiorowa świadomość i pamięć społeczeństw Francji, Belgii i Niderlandów na temat roli Polaków w wyzwalaniu ich krajów? Czy pamięć ta ma charakter powszechny, czy raczej ogranicza się do znajomości historii lokalnej właśnie lub bardzo wąskiej grupy pasjonatów?
Well, if I would respond that question very briefly, I would say the latter is true. That means that outside of a growing, I must say, growing group of enthusiasts, it's not well known. Like I said in my first answer, I studied history at university, and we never learned about this episode. We knew there were other nationalities fighting in that Second World War. But it is only those in Flanders, speaking of Flanders, those villages and towns liberated by the Polish, where you can find streets or statues, things that remind us of the fact that Polish people were there at a certain time. Many people live in the Poland Street, because it's in most of the towns there is a Poland Street, the Polenstraat. But nobody probably knows why they live there and what happened there and why it was named like this, or something to do with the name Maciek, for example. Most people don't know. We always tend to think about the Americans, the British, and the Canadians regarding the liberation during the Second World War. So it's not well known. But there's a growing group, and that's a good thing. And I know now, so that's why I made the story. That's why I was so enthusiastic to write down the stories of all those veterans. I can be very brief about this question, can I? Like this?
Yes, like Johannes said, there is a big improvement now. The last 10 years, we see a big improvement of this, the knowledge of this Polish contribution in this Allied struggle for freedom. And our association, First Polish Armed Division Belgium, also plays a role in this, because this association has as goal to spread the memory of the soldiers of the First Polish Armed Division, and there are many sons, daughters, and grandchildren member of this association. So we all try by screening, for instance, screening films, also giving presentations to the broad public, also giving conferences in school to improve the knowledge of this First Polish Armed Division. So like also the exhibition Armored Wings that came from Poland to Flanders some years ago and was shown in different Flemish cities with school visits, also to the broad public, people, inhabitants of liberated cities, but also from the regions around those cities. They came to visit this exhibition. Also, our book is a contribution for better knowledge of this Polish contribution. The film Magic Invincible, made 2 years ago by the Polish Historical Museum, and was undertitled in Dutch. So there's a very step forwards, because then we can show this film, this Polish film, into our own language. Also, the musea, the Memorial de Monttourmel in France, the Magic Memorial in Breda, and now the new museum in Roeselare, Bunker 1944, with a permanent exhibition of the contribution of the Polish soldiers in the liberation of Flanders and the role of General Magic. So it was opened 1 month ago, and with a very great success. It was a very difficult tragic to open, to finance and open this bunker, but finally 1 month ago it was opened by Mrs. Carolina Magic, and it till now it's a very big success. And the first day the bunker was opened, more than 1,200 people visited the bunker and this small exhibition about General Magic and his soldiers. So I think we are on the good way. So, and I'm very hopeful that the contribution of Polish soldiers will improve more and more.
Maybe I can add something on a sort of personal level. I had the impression that in the constellation of the common man in Belgium, let's say, the perception of Polish people is neutral because they didn't know about this historical fact. And in fact, I started my documentary about Polish economic migration when I found a can of Polish beer on my windowsill in Antwerp. And that's where this notion of Polish people in our country started. And then I went about to do this documentary, and then I met the people from the University of Leuven, and then I made this story. So I think that it's important that this perception of Polish people goes further than just economic migration or labor, but that it's well known that those people were the ones that liberated large parts of Flanders. Yeah, that's the only thing I had to add to that. I found that very important.
No to taka mała wycieczka do przeszłości, do historii, do okresu zimnej wojny. W 1988 roku, kiedy Polska była jeszcze w takim schyłkowym, można powiedzieć, komunizmie, ukazała się w Polsce książka Toma Petersa „Dziękujemy wam, Polacy”, która była tłumaczeniem jego pracy o pierwszej dywizji pancernej w ramach operacji Breda. I była to dla Polaków okazja do zapoznania się z historią dywizji z nieco innej perspektywy, gdyż polską naukę gniotła i cenzura, i takie założenia marksistowskie. Jak prezentuje się dzisiaj literatura na temat dywizji generała Maczka w Belgii, Holandii, Francji? Czy panów zdaniem Polacy powinni mieć do niej szerszy dostęp? I co ona może wnieść, jaką ma w sobie nową jakość do naszego postrzegania historii o pierwszej dywizji pancernej? Czy są takie znaczące prace?
So the last years there are many new books in Western Europe. So in Great Britain there were published a few new books, very nice and very complete books. Also in France there were two authors, Stéphane Brière and also Jacques Wiarczyk. They published two enormous, good documented book, but in French. So for Polish people, it's rather difficult to understand and to read. For us, the Belgians, we speak French, so it's not a problem. But for Polish people, it is a problem. And of course, there is now our book. It's the first general book about first Polish Orange Division in the Dutch-speaking part of Western Europe. All other books, they are only partly about some soldiers or about some cities. So, but our book is the first complete book. It's not only a historical book. It's a very complex book. A book on the table, not a book to read, not a book to investigate. No, to take in your hands, to look to the fantastic photographs, to read something. So, so I think there is a kind of a mission also for IPN. There are many books. They are written. You don't have to be rewritten. Now they exist, but in French, but also in English. So what you did with our book, it's a mission also to do with the other books, because then you can show to the Polish people, Polish-speaking people, what the literature is. Much of resources of the First Polish Orange Division or in Western Europe, in our archives, our photos, you don't have so much documentation here in Poland like we have. So I think this is also a very important mission for IPN, to make agreements with other editors, so then you can enlarge your library, Polish library.
Well, the book about of Tom Peters you mentioned about the liberation of Breda is an important book. I think our book has a much larger perspective in both bringing together this historical background and the personal stories of those people who lived it, this historical background. So that's maybe...
Yes, and of course this excellent, magnific photos of this along the combat route, the note, so those very detailed photos. It's also, I may say, a piece of art by Johannes. He's these black-white photos, not colored photos. Dus I'm in love with the book.
With the second part of the book. Sorry. Yes, like Dirk comes to mention, I besides all the portraits, I also undertook the journey from Arromanches to Wilhelmshaven, where the First Polish Armored Division stranded. Looking for traces, I looked for traces along this itinerary, and I found some really great ones. Of course, Dirk already told me about a scar in the facade of a building in Tielt. There was a tank that touched the wall, a Sherman tank. It was, wasn't it? Yes.
No, it was a Polish tank.
A Polish tank?
Yeah.
Okay, so that left a scar on the facade of a building in Tielt, for example. I found another great one. I was at the Mont Ormel, so at where the Falaise pocket took place. I was eating a sandwich in a cafe, and I got into a conversation with a farmer, telling him what to do, what I did there. And he immediately called the mayor, and it was a lady, and she came to the cafe. It took her half a minute because she was doing her garden just next door. It was that small, that village. And she took me to a tree where there was a German Mauser sniper gun sticking out of the tree. In fact, during the war, the Polish forces threw a grenade at a vehicle, and that vehicle exploded, and that gun got catapulted in the tree, and it was left there, and the tree just grew around the gun. So those are two examples. Another example, another very nice example, is a graffiti I found on a concrete block in the Netherlands to stop the tanks from crossing. And that graffiti said, it was a date. It was the 11th of August of the October, yes, the 8th October 1944, with the emblem of the Polish Armored Division he drew next to it. And it's still there, and nobody knows. So I found all those little traces, and I photographed the landscapes where they fought. So I undertook that journey. Another trace I found was, in fact, human remains that came out of the ground on Hill 262. So the Battle of the Mont Hormel. There are still human remains in the ground, and after a while, probably the ground spits them out, and I found it. Besides those traces, I also did some archival photography. I visited collectioners of war objects, like bullets, holsters, helmets. People collect them, and so I decided to archivally photograph them. Those things are all in the book.
Panowie, jest jeszcze jeden taki aspekt dotyczący przeszłości, trudnej przeszłości dla nas Polaków. To znaczy, kiedy pierwsza dywizja pancerna wyzwalała północno-zachodnią Europę, czyli to jest rok 1944, Polska zaczyna dostawać się w strefę wpływów sowieckich, Stalina. Częściowo za zgodą oczywiście aliantów, co już dokonało się podczas tajnych obrad w Teheranie, ale też prąca Armia Czerwona zajmuje terytoria Polski. To się łączy z trudną historią dla nas, wszystkich tutaj mieszkających w Polsce do dzisiaj w jakimś sensie. Ciągle płacimy za to wszystko pewną cenę. Ale tutaj mam takie pytanie, czy dla społeczeństw, które były wyzwalane między innymi przez pierwszą dywizję pancerną generała Maczka, ta historia, która działa się właśnie w Polsce po 1944 roku, potem już w okresie ogłoszonej przez premiera Wielkiej Brytanii Winstona Churchilla tej żelaznej granicy, zimnej wojny, czy po prostu te społeczeństwa o tym wiedziały, czy w jakikolwiek sposób były tym zainteresowane, czym jest komunizm dla społeczeństw narodów Europy Środkowej i Wschodniej?
My personal opinion, but this is my personal opinion, I think that Belgium, just after the war, when Poland was becoming a communist state, they were not interested. Because a few weeks after the new communist government was established here in Poland, the Belgian government, they didn't recognize anymore the Polish free government in London. So they fought together 4 years. And in only 2 weeks, they let them down. And he says, now we are going to recognize this communist regime because we don't want to oppose the Soviet Union. Soviet Union, one of our allies. So this is also for me a very difficult fact that soldiers who fought, who risked their lives, they were not recognized by my government. They were recognized, a communist government was recognized. I have two examples of soldiers that I found back. So there is one, Schmidt, and Mrs. Grace from Krasnik, who is here, she brought me in contact with a daughter of this Schmidt. She is now inhabitant of Krasnik, as he have the whole documentation of her father. So he was a soldier of the 24th Lancers. He liberated Ghent. And he came in contact with an entrepreneur from Ghent. And this entrepreneur, he was trading in glass. And they got well together, and he was working after the war. He was working in this firm in Ghent, in this glass trade firm, as a bookkeeper, and he wanted to stay in Belgium, and his wife was murdered by the Russians, and there was a small boy living in Krakow with family of him, and he wanted to bring over his small boy to Belgium. So he worked a lot, he saved a lot of money, and then he make examinations for this title for bookkeeper, and he succeeded. But then he applied for a work license in Belgium. And then he got a message from our government that he was not allowed to stay in Belgium. Why? There's one reason, and it's on paper. I have it on paper. Why? Because there are too many Belgians who can do the job as a bookkeeper. So he had to go away. He was not allowed in Belgium. He had to go away to Poland. So I cannot imagine why our government made such a decision. This is incredible. So those Polish soldiers who were alone in Flanders, who didn't have a wife or a fiancé, or the protection of their families-in-law, they were alone, and they were not welcomed by our government at that time. I have another example. Kitlinski. Kitlinski fought for our freedom. He got wounded, and he wanted to finish his studies in Antwerp at the university as an economist. He started his studies here in Poland. He was an officer, and he wanted to continue. So he wrote to the University of Antwerp, can I study at your university? There was no problem. So then he had to write to the Belgian embassy in London to get a visa, and also he had to pay for the visa, and he got this letter. I have this letter in my possession. This letter says from the Belgian ambassador in London, yes, you can go to Belgium, you can study in Antwerp, but when you finish your studies, you have to leave immediately the country. So he risked his life. He was wounded, and after his studies, he has to go back to Great Britain, and finally he got in the Netherlands, in Breda, where he got married. But we cannot understand which decisions were made at that time, because everybody, the government of Belgium was afraid of opposing the Soviet Union allies. So it was, you have to see it in an international context, but there's so many to investigate and to tell about those Polish liberators.
Yes, so regarding totalitarian states and communism, okay, we know the story about the Conference of Yalta and how that turned out for the Polish people, not only for the Polish people, but also for the Baltic states, for example. So if we look at history, we can maybe say something about the present, not that I can predict the future, but another sort of Conference of Yalta was already proposed 2 times after the annexation of the Crimea in 2014 by the Russian state, in which they wanted to have a sort of Conference of Yalta 2.0. And again, during the legislation of Donald Trump in 2017. So if we take some lessons from the past, we might, say something about this and what is happening now, but I don't think our book will immediately contribute to those kind of geopolitical things. Okay, just wanted to add to this.
Jasne, rozumiem to. Opisanie w zasadzie od tego powinniśmy naszą rozmowę o książce panów rozpocząć, czyli od samego tytułu. Zapomniani bohaterowie. Dlaczego oni stali się zapomniani? Już tutaj pan Johannes wcześniej o tym mówił, że jednak są takie osoby, które przechodzą przez te miasta i widzą jednak place, ulice, nazwy generała Maczka. Dlaczego zapomniani bohaterowie? Przez kogo zapomniani bohaterowie?
Well, I came upon this title after my working title. My working title was Forgotten Liberators. And then I spoke to those people one by one, and then I changed it to Forgotten Heroes. That's what I have to say about that. So, for the rest, your question was only a half.
Pytanie, które było...
I was too late with my...
dotyczyło tego, że mówił pan już o tym, że jednak są takie osoby, które podróżując przez te miasta, przechodząc, mieszkając tam, no jednak intryguje je to, dlaczego to są właśnie place, ulice imienia generała Maczka. To jest ten element tego zapomnienia?
Well, okay, you have the forgotten and you have the heroes. That's true. It's not forgotten, of course. Hardly anything gets to be forgotten in history because there's always people who are excited about something that happened throughout history. So I would say, no, it's not forgotten. But since all the people I spoke to from my generation, even people from the university, they didn't really know about that. The people who know are the people who live in those villages and who can attend to the commemorations, and they do know, and especially Dirk.
Can I give some more explanation? Why forgotten? Because I think in just after the war, in the following decades, all those veterans that I spoke, they want to be forgotten. They want not to talk about the war. They want to start a new life in Belgium with new families. And so it's only in the ending of their lives that they were talking about what they experience from horror. So more and more towards the ending of their life, they were talking to their children. But otherwise, like Nicole is here, her father, he didn't talk about the war in the first years of her life. It's only when she was older and more mature that he was talking about the war. He wanted to finish this history. So we were lucky with those 21 interviews that we got those veterans who wanted to talk about their experiences.
Like Dirk says, I found the same thing, that those people who got older and older, they were looking for some sort of psychological closure about what they had experienced, about what was done to them, and also what they did, because they were soldiers. And during the interviews, there was a journalist with me who spoke fluently Polish, which was important because after a while, when things got very emotional, sometimes they had to release something, they started to cry, and they continued in Polish, so I couldn't understand anymore. But that's what happened. And a lot of times I heard from their wives, "You never told me this. You have never told me this, and now you are telling this to people who are strangers." So that's maybe this generation. They didn't really speak about those things. So we were lucky that we could experience their real stories, yeah, in an emotional kind of way, even. So yeah.
Pozwolę sobie zadać ostatnie pytanie, bo przed nami jeszcze koncert fortepianowy. Ja jestem bardzo wdzięczny za książkę panów, że ją napisaliście. Dziękuję jako Polak, po prostu w swoim imieniu i gratuluję. Ale rodzi się jeszcze takie zawsze pytanie. Przy każdym takim temacie historycznym, przy każdym tego typu zagadnieniu, czy to jest już temat wyczerpany? Czy są jeszcze jakieś obszary, które można by było zbadać?
Well, you can make a story as broad as you want. You can take it to the present, but it will be difficult. I have to think about it. Maybe it might be a good idea to do something more with this. Well, apparently most of the veterans are already deceased. Only one is still alive, 102 years old. I cannot pronounce his name. So I think we have finished this story. But it's an interesting question because it starts to make me think. I couldn't give an example.
Perhaps there can be work to a more global view of this story of the first Polish Armed Division, like not only Flanders and the Netherlands, and not only France, and not only Great Britain, and not only Poland, but one global work with as much as documents and photos. That's very important. We have in my collection, I have about 500 photos only from the Flemish side. So I don't have all the rights of those photos, but perhaps it would be worthwhile that we can work together with this very few experts. There are only a few in France, a few in the Netherlands, a few in Belgium, and also a few in Great Britain, and also not naturally these Polish institutions like IPN and like also the the Museum of Polish History, who are working now on this issue. I think it would be worthwhile that we can make a global work, a global book in different, perhaps in different issues. But of course, this is a long academic work. Perhaps we can use the work and the knowledge of Polish universities, also Belgian universities. I think we can think about this, and it would be very nice that this story, this documented story, will be saved for the future.
Jeszcze raz dziękuję autorom za książkę. W ogóle sama historia, jak panowie pracowali, poznali się, jest też w ogóle historią filmową tak naprawdę i w ogóle to zainteresowanie Polską, więc ja jako tutaj po prostu w swoim imieniu tak naprawdę, ale bardzo wam dziękuję za książkę. Bardzo wam dziękuję też panowie za rozmowę i gratulacje.
Thank you. I came here last year in Warsaw to also study something that is very Polish, and that's the music by Frédéric Chopin. I came here, I lived here for 1 month to study all of the nocturnes that Chopin composed. He composed 21. I created a whole podcast where I talk about his music, who Chopin was, the Polish culture, which I love. And so I am now going to play 2 nocturnes of Chopin, Opus 48, number 1. It's my favorite. It's the nocturne that inspired me to come here in Warsaw. And afterwards, Opus 55, number 1. Thank you. The last piece that I will play, I want you all to get back some energy, to enjoy, to talk with everyone. So I will send you to the reception in a dancing way with 5 dances of Bartok, Romanian dances. Thank you for listening.
Szanowni Państwo, bardzo dziękuję za przybycie na dzisiejszą uroczystość wszystkim Państwu.